Hello, this is Ralph from Happy Dog Training and welcome to another episode of Dog Talk. Today we're going to talk about using cannabis to help dogs. As you may remember, if you're a regular listener, I had an interview with Dr. Cassara Andre last year, and we talked about veterinary cannabis and the applications based on my personal experiences working with her team and my dogs Sylvester and Max. What I subsequently did is I attended a veterinary cannabis guide certification course with Cassara Andre's team, and I completed this course and have been helping dogs getting a more refined cannabis treatments for the things that they come in with during training. So the majority of things that I see in training are probably related to mobility, early onset of hip dysplasia, arthritis, any kind of joint issues, and anxiety. So those are the two major components that come up in training and that I see with dogs that I work with. And because I wanted to understand better on how to use cannabis effectively, I took this course and I learned a lot. So I wanted to share some of those things in this podcast episode to give everybody who has a dog at home and thinks about using cannabis medication or is already using some form of cannabis product to think about how to use cannabis more effectively and maybe switching up what you're using to get really the right mix, because they're not all created equal and you can't just use anything. So there's a couple of things to consider when it comes to using cannabis products with animals or with yourself for that matter. You want to make sure you get the right thing. So in cannabis medicine, we have either hemp plants or marijuana plants that people usually get their extracts from. And there are about 700 different molecules in a cannabis plant, in a marijuana plant, that can be extracted and that all have different properties and different benefits to an animal or a person. The molecules that people are generally familiar with is CBD and THC. They're the most common ones and everybody has heard of that. Right? THC gets you high, CBD does not. So that's basically the popular wisdom about that's cannabis for you. But there are 700 molecules in every cannabis plant. And they all have different benefits. There is also flavonoids and there's terpenes, and they all have different benefits and profiles. So terpenes and flavonoids are also found in other plants, not just in cannabis plants, but they all have therapeutic effect if combined correctly. And when you get a cannabis product to help your pet, let's just say with mobility, we're dealing with some inflammation, we have some pain, and we have some things that we want to address, we should pick molecules that help us make our dog feel better. So if we'll just go off now and just get normal CBD in our product, or a product that just has CBD like an isolate product, it's not bad, but it's not necessarily the best approach, and we're most likely not going to see the best benefit out of it. Because one of the things that's important about cannabis medicine is that we try to get a more complex profile, a more full spectrum profile, if you will. That's used as a marketing slang, full spectrum, but a complex profile that has multiple molecules in it beyond it being an isolate of a CBD or THC product, which would not be as effective. So there's something called the entourage effect, where the sum is just greater than all the parts, and the more complete or complex a profile is, the better it tends to work and the safer it usually is also in administration. But so let's take an example. So I have, let me look here at my notes, but I have a little cheat sheet I put together to help when I work with dogs and find the right medications, cannabis medications. But so let's take pain and anti-inflammatory situations. The molecules generally that would be beneficial to have would be CBD and THC, great, so we understand those, but also CBN and CBDA and THCA. And on the terpenoid side, if you wanted to have something anti-inflammatory, there would be myrcene and linalool, pinene, limonene, beta-lactam. So there's all kinds of ingredients or molecules that benefit. And if we just pick one and don't have a more complex profile, we may forfeit some of the benefits or we may not see any results. So that's probably the first message out of picking the right cannabis medication I'd like to get across is we have to have a profile that contains most of the molecules that are beneficial to us. So I had worked with a dog recently that has some mobility challenges, and I had recommended some cannabis products before I'd even finished the course. And the dog owner ended up going to a dispensary, and they have a product that is marketed towards the use in animals. And that product is a good product, nothing wrong with the product per se, and it has a complex profile. It is a very clean product, no pesticides or so in it. But it didn't have the right molecules outside CBD and THC. So it was a mixture of that, which is good, but it had some other molecules in it that are more beneficial for other conditions. They were not useful for the pain and inflammation the dog owner was trying to address with his dog. So I went online and contacted a company that made that product and got what's called the certificate of analysis that shows everything that's in this product plus other tests and verifications. And I was able to show him, yeah, this is good, we can use that, you have to just get a higher dosage, but there's also other molecules and maybe different products that are actually more beneficial to your dog and you would get more out of it. So you wouldn't be paying for things that actually don't benefit your dog directly. You can pick a product where the money is better spent and getting a complex profile that targets the exact condition versus this condition and then other conditions the dog doesn't have. So that's important to pick the right thing. So that's the first thing. And getting that right is something that you probably as a dog owner who wants to use cannabis or is using cannabis needs some help with. And that's where what I did, being a veterinary cannabis guide and also veterinary cannabis counselors and then veterinarians educated in cannabis can come in and help identify the right medication and profile in the cannabis world. That's the first thing, getting the profile right and getting some help to do it. The second thing is, if you want to use cannabis with your dog, maybe you use it yourself and you just saw a product somewhere on a shelf and you thought, oh, that's CBD drops, let me just get that for my dog. That may or may not be a good idea depending on where these drops are coming from. So the certificate of analysis I mentioned, in the good products, in the very well-designed products, you will get a certificate of analysis. And the cheap products you may find at a gas station, it may be impossible to get a certificate of analysis. And then you don't really know what's actually in the product. So when they test the products and they produce the certificates, they will also test what pesticides are in the product. Obviously, this is extracted from a plant which is grown on a farm. And did they use pesticides? Which ones? Are these pesticides still in this product? Do we find residue of those pesticides in those products? That's important to know because that could be very harmful if they are. Tests for heavy metals. Are there heavy metals in this product? Because cannabis plants tend to accumulate pesticides and heavy metals and other pollutants in the soil and the air. They can actually be used to clean environments. They have planted cannabis plants, I believe, around Chernobyl quite a bit to absorb a lot of the radiation even out of the soil. And they can be used to cleanse. You just have to dispose of them after. You can't use them to make cannabis oil out of, right? Not that I think that the drops you buy here in America have been grown around Chernobyl. But my point is, you have to know what kind of pollutants are in your product, and heavy metals are in a lot of soil areas. So you want that to be tested for. Another thing is that you have to obviously extract the molecules you're after. And for that, the companies use solvents. They could be alcohol-based, they could be oil-based, they could be all kinds of solvents that are used to extract the molecules the company is producing. Are these solvents still present in the product or have they evaporated in the production process? You want to know that as well. Are there bacteria in there? Is there mold in there? Are there any other pollutants in there? Those are important questions if you want to give that product to your dog. So when you buy a product at a dispensary or you buy it online from a reputable manufacturer, they will always either have the certificates of analysis available on their website or will be very happy to send it to you if you just ask them. There's your phone number on the package or on the website. Just call them or email them and say, hey, I need the certificate of analysis for this product A and this batch number, because this will obviously be tested for every production batch and will vary with every production batch. So you have to always look at the one that you have in your hand. So if you buy a product and there's a batch number written on the package somewhere, you go look that up and say, hey, I need the certificate of analysis for this. And you may not understand what's written on the certificate of analysis. Again, that's where people like the course I took and people who work in cannabis come in to help, and they can help you guide. They can help you guide to find the right products. They can help you figure out if this is a safe product, the one that you're already using. If you like it, it seems to work. A good idea to get a second set of eyes on that if it wasn't looked over by either a veterinarian or a veterinary cannabis counselor or guide, to see if this product is clean enough for long-term usage. Or I'm probably going to run into some problems because of pollutants that may be in there. So understand that if it's cheap and available somewhere just off the shelf in a store and it's not a major brand, it may be completely impossible to determine what's actually in the product. How much CBD is actually in what you purchased there for your $20, $30, $40 off the shelf? Is it actually potent enough to make a difference? How much do you need to actually give to your dog to have an impact? Dosages will vary, and it's not necessarily done by body weight when it comes to cannabis medicine. So body weight can be a starting point as a determining factor of how much of a particular molecule should probably be given, but that's only a first benchmark. You still start off at a very low dosage, and then you work your way up very gradually until you get to that benchmark, and then you reassess. Doesn't mean you stop there. So you may go a lot higher depending on what you're dealing with. Cannabis medication is generally very safe, and you can titrate up to much higher levels than the body weight per se would indicate, because body weight is not the predominant factor in applying cannabis when it comes to treating ailments. With regular medication, body weight is really much all that matters, because it goes about how much concentration of a, let's say, an aspirin is in the blood before it has an effect, right? Or whatever medication you're taking. So it goes very much by body weight. But while in case of cannabis medication, it has not so much to do with body weight. It has more to do with which receptors are we trying to target? Which conditions are we trying to target? Are we trying to reduce a medication? Are we trying to avoid a medication? Are we maybe risking an overdose of a medication? Because there's interactions. They're all kind of attached to similar systems. There are enzymes that break medications down. These same enzymes break cannabis medication down. So if both are in the system, well, one may block the other. That may be sometimes a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. So it really depends on each condition and each dog and each patient what the right approach is, what the right amount of CBD, THC, CBDA, CBDG, CBDN, whatever, but kind of terpenoids or flavonoids we're adding in the mix may be to help. And it also depends on the medication your dog's already taking, what the right and safe approach is. So the best way of doing it, if you want to work with cannabis, is to have a conversation with your veterinarian and let him know or her know that that is something you're interested in doing, and understand that the veterinarian cannot prescribe it for you because it is still federally illegal. Even if you're living in one of the 40 states, because the majority of states have legalized it now, but if you're living in one of the states where it's absolutely legal to use for absolutely anything and everything under the sun, federally it's still not. So a veterinarian is not allowed to write you a prescription or give you a medical cannabis card like a doctor can do and give it to a person. A veterinarian can't do that. So based on that, some veterinarians are very open of discussing it with you and advising you what may be a good idea and maybe help you, also and guide you, while other veterinarians may not be. But your veterinarian, no matter where he falls on the spectrum or she falls on the spectrum, they should be part of the picture, because you may need some blood work, you may need to test if something's working or safe or affecting or interacting with each other. The medications your dog's taking have to be looked at in that context. And just because you're giving cannabis, let's say for seizures, doesn't mean you can stop all seizure medication, for example. Right? So yeah, you have to be careful how you approach these things. And having a medical professional in the picture is really helpful to avoid any long-term problems for your pet, which I'm sure nobody wants. The idea of using cannabis medication is to avoid problems and catch them early and deal with them before you need the heavy hitters, medications and surgery. So it's about affecting the body and helping the body heal and be better before you have to reach for the heavy stuff. And maybe avoid even using the heavy stuff at all. But there's cases where you will need both. Cancer treatment would be one of those scenarios where you definitely will have both. But just understand that it's good to have some guidance and help from people you trust. So involving your veterinarian into this is a good idea, and then having somebody who's really knowledgeable about cannabis, which may not be your veterinarian, added into the mix who can help and guide and work together with your veterinarian to make sure everything we're doing doesn't cause any problems down the line. So that's a little bit on using cannabis with animals. So I'm 100% behind using cannabis products with animals. I do it on our dogs. I've been doing it with my dogs for a long time. As I talked about in the podcast with Dr. Andre, my dog Sylvester had probably a year, 2 years more of life because of cannabis, because otherwise he would have been in pain. And with that, I was able to completely prevent that. And he ultimately was able to pass peacefully in his own home without having to go to the vet for euthanasia. I mean, that's priceless, right? So especially at end of life, cannabis can make a huge difference and give your dog a lot of peace and comfort that otherwise isn't there. But not just in that scenario, even way earlier with just joint issues and other things. There is so many benefits of exploring cannabis medication for a lot of conditions that it's worth looking into, but you just need to do it with proper guidance and have help from someone who has the experience, the education, and the background, and can help you, guide you along those journeys instead of just picking up whatever lies around on the shelf. Okay, so there's a couple of points I wanted to share about my experience. The cannabis course I took, by the way, is fantastic. So any dog trainer or any person generally interested in working with cannabis medication. I'm obviously not a veterinarian. I'm not a vet tech either. So the veterinary guide certification is for non-medical professionals and who want to work with cannabis medication. It is a great course. Anybody who wants to do this should. I recommend it. You'll learn a lot. It will be very valuable, and it's a good group of people who is teaching it, and the network that you're going to become part of doing it is also very nice, because you have always some resources to draw on if you need help or have questions. So overall, great experience, and I learned a lot, and I'm going to use that knowledge going forward to help dogs even better, because I've been recommending cannabis products for a while, just based on the limited knowledge I had from my own dogs for mobility. But now I'm equipped to even do more for other things. So if you have more interest in that, there's under the services section in the website, there is a service offering that I provide help to people figuring out what to do and how to approach cannabis in a safe manner. If you're interested, check it out. Or if you want to rather work with another cannabis counselor or guide, go for it. Just get some guidance. It's important that if you want to really approach it and get the maximum benefit out of this powerful plant, it's good to have guidance and work with someone you trust and someone that can help you make sure it stays all safe for your pet. Okay, so I hope you found this interesting, it's beneficial, you got something out of it, and I see you again next time. Bye.